Welcome to another edition of the Final Wrap Sports Talk Show. I am your host, the NFLExporter, and we are live on DerekShapiroShow.com. As always, we have a great show in store for you this week. But before we get into our first segment, let's make sure you know how to connect with us on our social networks. For myself, you can find me on Facebook as well as Twitter at NFLExporter. Or you can go to youtube.com, click on channels in the search engine, put NFLExporter, or you can go to youtube.com in the search engine, put NFLExporter on Derek Shapiro Show. The name of the show is called The Final Wrap. The way that you spell NFLExporter is NFLExporter. So again, you can find me on Facebook or Twitter using NFLExporter, or go to YouTube. For Derek Shapiro, you can go to Twitter, find him at Derek Shapiro Show, and you spell show S-H-O. There's no W on the end. Also find Derek on Facebook at Derek Shapiro. Now, to participate and be a part of the show, the call-in number is 716-249-0552. Again, that phone number is 716-249-0552. Or if you would like to hit us up using email, the email address is NFLExporter@yahoo.com. That's NFLExporter@yahoo.com. Please make sure to leave your name, your city and state, your favorite football team, and just say that you would like your comment or whatever it is that you wanted to talk about or have discussed to be on the Final Wrap Sports Talk Show on DerekShapiroShow.com. Now let's go ahead and get into our first segment, and what a relief it is that we can get straight into some football. The first couple weeks of the season have been marred by the Ray Rice domestic violence issue, the Adrian Peterson child abuse issue, all the mishaps and wrong handling of situation with Commissioner Roger Goodell in the NFL league offices. The NFL has finally reached an agreement with the Players Association concerning the new drug policy. So we've seen a lot of players with 4-game suspensions back on the football field this week. We had the Jerry Jones incident with him having a lawsuit filed by a young lady who was accusing him of basically groping and forcibly touching and kissing on her. And so it's a relief to just be able to go ahead and talk about football. Obviously, those issues aren't going away. They're dealing with the court system, so you know that those things can drag out for quite some time. But at least for this week, we can give those issues a rest and concentrate on football. As always, let's start with our latest news and trending topics around the NFL. And sad to say, but the injury bug continues to put players on the IR list. Starting this week, we have Carolina Panthers running back Jonathan Stewart suffered a sprained knee. He's going to be out for quite some time. Also, Carolina running back Mike Tolbert suffered a hairline fracture in his leg. He is definitely out for this upcoming Sunday. They're going to evaluate him to see when he's going to return to the field. The Panthers were already without their starting running back DeAngelo Williams, who missed the game this past Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so the Panthers already were having trouble moving the football, especially on the ground. Now all three of their running backs are going to be injured for this upcoming Sunday unless Williams gives it a go, but he won't be 100%. And so they've got some serious issues to address at the running back position in Carolina. The Minnesota Vikings starting quarterback Matt Castle went down. He's got fractured bones in his foot. Right now, we don't know how long he's going to be out, but it is going to be for a substantial amount of time. We had T.Y. Hilton, the wide receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. Now, his is minor. He came into the game battling a growing injury. He suffered a mild sprained ankle, and so I don't think that he's going to miss any time. But obviously, you want to keep your eyes on that. Man, I really feel bad for Dennis Pitta, the tight end for the Baltimore Ravens. He suffered a dislocated hip. It's the same hip that he dislocated last year. When you get an injury of that magnitude, especially 2 years in a row, at this point, they're not even sure if Pitta is going to be able to continue his pro career. So we certainly wish him best of luck and hope that he can get back healthy and, maybe get back on the football field one day. Running back Danny Woodhead of the San Diego Chargers suffered a broken fibula. He is gone for the year. The Philadelphia Eagles continue to have injuries on their offensive line. You're wondering how long that's going to hold up. You have their center, Jason Kels. He's going to have sports hernia surgery, so he's going to miss about 4 to 8 weeks. They already had two of their other linemen go down with injuries in the first 2 weeks of the season. One guy is gone for the year. The other one is not slated to return until late in the year. And so we're definitely going to keep an eye on that Eagles line that came into the season being one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Next, we have D'Angelo Hall, defensive back for the Washington Redskins. He's gone for the season with a torn Achilles. Certainly wish him the best of luck returning to the football field next year. Clay Matthews, the outside linebacker for the Green Bay Packers, suffered a groin injury. He came in to the game with it not feeling well, just didn't feel right playing on the football field this past week against Detroit. And so we have to watch him and see when he's going to be back to full strength. I tell you, Clay Matthews was one of the best players in the NFL, but over the past 2 to 3 years, this guy has really become injury prone. He's not the same player that we've seen him be when he was a Pro Bowler as a rookie and in his second year. Ike Taylor of the Pittsburgh Steelers is out indefinitely with a broken forearm. You also have rookie linebacker Ryan Shazier, who is playing really well for Pittsburgh. He has a sprained MCL. He's got to get an MRI on that. We'll know the details by this time next week, how long he's gone for the season. And then also Jarvis Jones, their outside linebacker, has got to have wrist surgery. He's out indefinitely as well. That Pittsburgh Steelers defense already was struggling. Finally found some type of success in the game Sunday night at Carolina, but unfortunately 3 of their starters are out of the rotation for quite some time. It could be the season for both Taylor and Shazier. Who knows? For Taylor and Jones. As for Shazier, we're certainly hoping that sprained MCL is just that, and he can return to the field. You also had Kyle Rudolph, the tight end for the Minnesota Vikings. The luck is just continuing to get worse and worse for the Vikings. They're already without their star running back, Adrian Peterson. They lose their starting quarterback. Now they're losing their starting tight end with the groin injury for 6 weeks. And so things are not looking good for that Vikings offense at this point. You also have Brandon Marshall, star wide receiver for the Chicago Bears. He came into the game battling a knee and ankle injury, re-injured that in the third quarter of the game Monday night against the Jets. We'll have to wait to see what his timetable on returning is. I think the biggest injury that really came away from this week was the inside linebacker Stephen Tulloch for the Detroit Lions. He hurt himself, tore his MCL. He is gone for the year. He had a sack on the Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers, got up to celebrate, and when he jumped in the air and landed, he tore his ACL. And so he is gone for the year, and that is a big loss. That Lions defense was really playing well this year, him and DeAndre Levy, and so they're going to have to certainly make up for that loss somehow, some way. The other big news coming out of week 3 in the NFL, you had 2 rookie quarterbacks who are going to be starting for their teams moving forward. The number 3 overall pick, Blake Bortles, is now going to take over as the starter for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And because of the injury to Matt Castle, Teddy Bridgewater, the number 32 overall pick in the first round, he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings now. And again, already with 2 of their weapons gone, and I really should say 3 because their number 3 receiver, Jerome Simpson, got suspended for being arrested with marijuana. And so Teddy Bridgewater and Blake Bortles, your 2 rookie quarterbacks, are now going to be taking over as starters for their respective teams. That is going to wrap up our first segment. Make sure to come back after this quick commercial break so we can talk some fantasy football. Once again, you are listening to The Final Wrap, the official NFL and fantasy football show on DerekShapiroShow.com with your host, the NFL Exporter. We'll be right back in a moment. Thank you for returning to the Final Wrap Sports Talk Show with your host, the NFL Exporter, live on DerekShapiroShow.com. You want to make sure to join us each and every Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time to recap every game from the week before NFL action, as well as all your latest news and updates for NFL and fantasy football. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our fantasy football section, where we always take a look at our studs as well as our duds. For week 3 in the NFL, the overall points leader as well as the top quarterback was Andrew Luck of the Indianapolis Colts. Luck went off on the Jaguars for a career high 370 passing yards and 4 touchdowns, which had a perfect quarterback rating. So congratulations to him. Next, we had Kirk Cousins of the Washington Redskins with 27, had over 400 passing yards and 3 TDs. We had Nick Foles with 325 yards and 3 touchdowns for the Philadelphia Eagles. Matt Ryan had 286 yards and 3 TDs for the Atlanta Falcons. And then we had 2 quarterbacks tied with 21 points, that being Russell Wilson of the Seattle Seahawks and third-string quarterback Austin Davis of the St. Louis Rams. Our duds at the quarterback position are some familiar names, but on the wrong list. We have Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. This is his second time in 3 weeks making this list, only 10 points against the Detroit Lions. Andy Dalton had 169 passing yards and an interception, only 11 points for the Cincinnati Bengals. If it wasn't for him catching a touchdown, he would have had less than that. And then Tom Brady has made this list every single game this season. That is absolutely unheard of. Brady only had 1 touchdown pass against the hapless Raiders at home. You just are not used to seeing those type of numbers, especially from Rodgers and Brady. That is absolutely unacceptable. At the running back position, Marshawn Lynch of the Seattle Seahawks led the way again. He had 24 points. That is the second time this year he has led running backs in fantasy football points. We had Rashard Jennings play inspired football. He had 176 rushing yards and a touchdown. That was good for 23 points. He said he dedicated that game to his father, who had both of his legs amputated due to a disease. And so he went out there and said he had 2 legs. He certainly wanted to use those. We had Joe McKnight. I'm quite sure nobody had him on their fantasy roster. He had 2 touchdown receptions for the Kansas City Chiefs. That was good for 18 points. We had 3 players tied with 17. DeMarco Murray of the Dallas Cowboys tallied his 3rd straight 100-yard game. Niles Davis continues to put up the big fantasy numbers for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then LeGarrette Blount in garbage time, although the points do still count, he was good for 17 points as well. And then we had 2 players tied with 16 points, that being Giovanni Bernard of the Cincinnati Bengals. He continues to put up the big fantasy numbers. And we had Fred Jackson with 16 points. He had a receiving touchdown for the Buffalo Bills against the San Diego Chargers. The duds of the week start off with Shane Vereen of the New England Patriots, back-to-back weeks. He had 4 points last week, 3 this week. Big-time disappointment there. Chris Johnson of the New York Jets, I don't know what's happened to him. He only had 3 points in Monday night game against Chicago. Darren Sproles was held to just 3 points against the Washington Redskins. Stephen Ridley, after 100 yards and a touchdown, came back with only 4 points against the Oakland Raiders at home. CJ Spiller only had 5 points in a home loss to San Diego. He's with the Buffalo Bills. Your biggest disappointments of the week came from Frank Gore, Eddie Lacy, and Monty Ball. Each of those guys only had 1 point, and Shady McCoy of the Philadelphia Eagles only had 2 points. This was a very low week score-wise in fantasy football. I don't know what happened, but your stars just did not get the job done. At the wide receiver position, you have Julio Jones led the way with 28 big points, 161 yards, and 2 TDs as he dominated the weak Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary. Jeremy Maclin continues to be a pleasant surprise. He was a late round pick. He had 154 yards and a touchdown for the Philadelphia Eagles with 21 points. I tell you a guy who's on a roll right now. How about Antonio Brown for the Pittsburgh Steelers? 10 catches, 90 yards, 2 more touchdowns. That was good for 21 points. We had 4 players with 17, Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson, both of the Washington Redskins. Kelvin Benjamin, the rookie from the Carolina Panthers. And then Jordan Matthews, the rookie from the Philadelphia Eagles. He also had 17 points as well. And then you have Devin Hester of the Atlanta Falcons. And the players I just named, Pierre Garçon, Deshaun Jackson, Kelvin Benjamin, and Jordan Matthews, all of those guys had 19 points. Devin Hester had 17. And then we had 2 players coming in with 16, that being Eddie Royal and Victor Cruz of the New York Giants. Good to see him finally get off the schneid. I was starting to think that he was just completely fantasy football irrelevant. Our duds for the week, all-star names. You got Keenan Allen, Larry Fitzgerald, Andre Johnson, Randall Cobb. Now, Keenan Allen and Larry Fitzgerald only had 1 point. Randall Cobb and Andre Johnson only 2. Percy Harvin only 4. And Demaryius Thomas and Jordy Nelson, 2 top 5 wide receivers, each respectively only had 5 points. Again, I don't know what happened in fantasy football this week, but superstars, the production was just at a minimum. At the tight end position, Martellus Bennett of the Chicago Bears, another productive game. He's certainly proven to be a valuable asset to quarterback Jay Cutler. He had 2 touchdowns. That was good for 17 points. Greg Olsen continues to shine out in Carolina. He had 12 points. Rob Gronkowski of the New England Patriots, Kobe Fleener and Dwayne Allen of the Indianapolis Colts, along with Andrew Curlis and Josh Hill, tight end for the New Orleans Saints. All of those players were tied with 10 points. We had Travis Kelce, the tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, coming with 9. And then we had 3 players tied with 8, that being Daniel Fells of the New York Giants, Jacob Tamme of the Denver Broncos, and Lance Kendricks of the St. Louis Rams. Our duds of the week were Jordan Cameron and Charles Clay. Cameron with the Cleveland Browns, Clay with the Miami Dolphins. Both of these guys were rated in the top 10 for fantasy football tight ends this year. Both of them have done absolutely nothing. You've got Jason Witten, 3 straight games of no production, only 4 points. And then Jimmy Graham, only 5 points. Surprising that he did not dominate that Minnesota Vikings defense. All of those guys underachieved big time in week 3 for NFL football. Let's get over to our defenses. The top defense of the week was the Atlanta Falcons, 28 points as they dominated the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football. The Detroit Lions and the Indianapolis Colts both had 17. The Steelers had 13. The Chicago Bears had 12, and rounding out our top 5 were the Cincinnati Bengals defense, who are playing extremely well. They had 11 points. Our duds of the week go for the Cleveland Browns with 1 point, Baltimore Ravens with 2, San Francisco 49ers only 2 points against a backup quarterback. You're not used to seeing that. And then we had 2 teams with negative points. You know that's unacceptable. That being the Carolina Panthers with -7 and the Houston Texans with -1. That will not suffice. I'm quite sure their owners were very upset with their performances this past week. And then to round out our fantasy football studs, at the kicker position, Adam Vinatieri, kicker for the Indianapolis Colts, had 16. Sean Swisham and Nick Folk of the Jets had 15 points. Also, Cody Parker of the Philadelphia Eagles, excuse me for leaving him out, he had 15 as well. How about the Cardinals rookie, Chandler Carta Tizano had 13 points. He has not missed a field goal all season long. You got Josh Brown of the New York Giants with 12. Our duds of the week start with Mason Crosby, kicker for the Green Bay Packers, just 1 point. Billy Cundiff missed 2 huge field goals for the Cleveland Browns. Could be a reason that they lost that football game. They only lost by 2 points at home. He only had 1 point. How about Phil Dawson, who was a top 5 kicker for the San Francisco 49ers, second game this year where he only had 1 point. And then you have Shane Graham, kicker for the New Orleans Saints. Come on, only 2 points. He had an extra point block. And Nick Freese is no longer has a home in the NFL right now. He missed 2 field goals. The Lions released him. He is replaced now by Alex Henry. And also, I forgot to mention in our first segment about that, Freese is now gone. So Alex Henry is coming in to be the new place kicker for the Detroit Lions. But also, we've got some dissension going on out in Miami. Ryan Tannehill has played very poorly for the Miami Dolphins. The head coach did not announce who the starter is next week. And were already rumors coming into the season that organization was not quite sold on him being the franchise quarterback. Sounds like if he doesn't turn it around quick, he's going to find himself on the bench. Let's go to another break. When we come back, we'll go ahead and do what we do. The show is called The Final Wrap because we recap all of the NFL action from around each week. And we're going to do that once we come back from a commercial break. Once again, it is the NFL Exporter on DerekShapiroShow.com. Stay tuned. Thank you for returning to The Final Wrap, your official NFL and fantasy football sports talk show live on DerekShapiroShow.com. Once again, I am your host, the NFL Exporter, and you want to make sure to join us each and every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, you also want to make sure to connect with us on our social networks. For myself, you can find me on Facebook and Twitter at NFL Exporter. You can also go to YouTube.com, click on channels, and in the search engine, put NFL Exporter. Or you can put in the search engine NFL Exporter on DerekShapiroShow.com, and it will bring up all of the shows we've done thus far for the NFL season in 2014. The way that you spell NFL Exporter for Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube is NFLExporter. You can also connect with Derek Shapiro on Facebook at Derek Shapiro and on Twitter at Derek Shapiro Show. And show is spelled SHO. There is no W at the end. And then we would love to hear from you, our fans and our listeners out there. Become a part of the show. If you'd like to leave comments, need some fantasy football advice, have some questions, or just would like to chop it up about NFL or fantasy football, the call-in number is 716-249-0552. The email address is NFLExporter@yahoo.com. Now let's go ahead and recap all of the NFL action that took place in Week 3. Things got started on Thursday night as the Atlanta Falcons raced out to a 56-0 lead. The final score of that game was 56-14. The Falcons hammered the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In this one, it was all about Atlanta. Their defense forced 5 turnovers. Quarterback Matt Ryan had 286 passing yards and 3 TDs. Stud wide receiver Julio Jones had 161 receiving yards along with 2 touchdowns, and Devin Hester became the NFL's all-time leading return man as he ran back a punt for his 20th touchdown to break the record that he was tied with Deion Sanders for so long. Hester now owns that record, has his names in the record books as the guy who's returned the most punts, kickoff returns, or interceptions in NFL history for touchdowns. That win improved Atlanta to 2-1, while the Buccaneers are falling fast at 0-3 after being embarrassed in a nationally televised game. I'm not sure how the Buccaneers are going to recover from this one. We had the San Diego Chargers beat the Buffalo Bills 22-10. This was an extremely close game, even though San Diego won by 12 points. I haven't seen a game with the stats being this close in a very long time. San Diego only had 2 more first downs. The Bills only had 2 more plays. San Diego's offense only had 16 more total yards. San Diego's offense only had 18 more passing yards. The Bills had 2 more rushing yards. San Diego only had 2 more minutes in time of possession. Neither team had a turnover, and both quarterbacks played pretty well. Phillip Rivers had 256 passing yards and 2 TDs, while E.J. Manuel had 238 yards, did not commit a turnover for the 3rd straight game. So I think that is definitely what is allowing Buffalo to win and stay in football games. But I think the biggest thing that you've seen in this one is that the Buffalo Bills playmakers were held in check. Last week, after a 102-yard touchdown return, C.J. Spiller did not return a kickoff for a touchdown. Most notably, him and fellow running back Fred Jackson were ineffective in the running game, having 16 carries for a combined 59 yards. Sammy Watkins, their star rookie wide receiver, was held to just 1 catch for 12 yards. And then also when you look at penalties, Buffalo led that category by a huge margin. San Diego only had 6 penalties for 44 yards. The Bills had 11 for 110. So I think that this game, with San Diego winning by 12, you can certainly see how penalties and San Diego being able to keep the Bills playmakers in check allowed for them to get a victory on the road. Both of these teams now are 2-1. Next, we had the Dallas Cowboys coming back from a 21-0 deficit to beat the St. Louis Rams 34-31. It was a lot of things that went on in this game. Now, first and foremost, you have the Rams losing by 3 points at home, but they had 3 turnovers, most notably an interception that was returned for a touchdown that gave Dallas the lead in the 4th quarter. You also seen the Rams commit 8 penalties for 119 yards. And so when you have things like that happening, you end up losing by 3, I'm quite sure there's a lot of regrets. When you look at the total yards, St. Louis dominated with 448 total yards. They had 5 more minutes in time of possession. 3rd string quarterback Austin Davis is playing really well. Had 327 yards and 3 TDs, but again, had 2 interceptions and 1 was costly, the one that resulted in a touchdown return for the Cowboys. When you're looking at Dallas, I think in this one, you've got an opportunity to see how that defense, why that defense was called one of the worst in the NFL coming into the season. I mean, you're giving up 448 total yards to the St. Louis Rams and a 3rd string quarterback. Nonetheless, this is a game in the past that the Cowboys would have lost. They found a way to win. You had DeMarco Murray have his 3rd straight 100-yard game. Des Bryant had a big 68-yard TD to really get Dallas back in that football game. And so the Cowboys are now 2-1. The Rams are 1-2. And things haven't changed too much for St. Louis through 3 games from last year. They play tough defense. They're in a lot of games. But the old saying applies, bad teams find ways to lose football games. And that's exactly what the Rams did in this one. We had the Philadelphia Eagles win a thriller at home, 37-34. We predicted this one would be a shootout, and that's exactly what it was. Nick Foles, quarterback for the Eagles, had 325 passing yards, along with 3 touchdowns. Kirk Cousins, in his first start, replacing the injured Robert Griffith III, had 427 passing yards, 3 TDs, but a very costly interception that led to a touchdown by Philadelphia to tie this ball game. What really got Philadelphia back in this one was a kick return that they scored for a touchdown. Now, this is another game that you look inside the numbers and you see that it was the Washington Redskins having 10 penalties for 131 yards. I think that really cost them in the end, along with that 1 costly turnover by Kirk Cousins towards the end of the game. Nonetheless, we had a lot of guys stack up on stats. Pierre Garçon had 138 yards and a TD in his return to Philadelphia. Deshaun Jackson caught an 81-yard bomb for a touchdown. Jeremy Maclin had 154 yards and a touchdown for the Eagles. And rookie Jordan Matthews had 2 big touchdown catches. He had 8 catches for 59 yards. The big news that came out of this one was obviously Deshaun Jackson returning to Philadelphia. Tensions were already high based on that. A fight broke out in this game when you had a Washington Redskin defensive tackle put a big-time hit on quarterback Nick Foles after a play was over, in which Foles, what originally was called an interception, the player dropped the ball, but upon returning that interception, Nick Foles got laid out by the big defensive tackle. Obviously, the Eagles players took offense to that, and we had a huge fight break out. Luckily, referees were able to get that under control. But the defensive tackle who put the hit on Foles was ejected from that ball game, and that really was a huge momentum changer there. Nonetheless, you have Philadelphia improving to 3-0. The Redskins now drop to 1-2. We had the New York Giants picking up their first victory of the season at home, winning 30-17 over the Houston Texans. The big news that came out of this one is that Arian Foster, running back for the Houston Texans, was unable to play with a hamstring injury. So we're certainly going to keep an eye on that one moving forward. And when you look inside the numbers, you see that finally the Giants were able to come away from this one with just 1 turnover, and it wasn't by Eli Manning. And so that certainly proved to help them win this ball game. Now you have running back Rashad Jennings for the New York Giants go off for 176 running yards on 34 carries. Victor Cruz also found the end zone for the first time in a long time. He had 107 receiving yards. In a game that was only decided by 13 points. Once again, turnovers were a big factor in this one. You had Houston quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick throw 3 interceptions, and that's just something that you can't do on the road. You also noticed that Eli Manning was only sacked 1 time, and so he did have time to throw the football. I certainly thought that J.J. Watt and that defense was going to be all over him. And then Andre Johnson has not found the end zone yet this season. A very quiet game, only 4 catches for 24 yards. Now the Houston Texans are 2-1. The New York Giants are 1-2. We had the New Orleans Saints pick up their first victory of the season, but it was not an impressive victory as we had originally thought. Last year in the Superdome, the Saints were averaging about 36 points a game. In this one, they only won 20-9, not putting the final nail in the coffin until the 4th quarter when Drew Brees found Marcus Colston to put New Orleans ahead 20-9. Up until that point, they only had a 13-9 lead. Now, Drew Brees did have 293 yards and 2 TDs. But Jimmy Graham was held in check with only 64 yards. The leading receiver for New Orleans had 8 catches for 74 yards, that being rookie Brandon Cooks. In this one, I think the biggest thing you've seen is that the Saints had 14 more first downs than the Minnesota Vikings. And without Adrian Peterson, their star running back, who is gone indefinitely dealing with off-the-field issues, Minnesota continues to struggle to run the football, having 29 carries for just 59 yards. Now, also in this game, Matt Castle, the starting quarterback for Minnesota, was injured. I'm not sure how long he's going to be out, so rookie Teddy Bridgewater now steps in. And this was a game, like I said, the Saints did not look too impressive. They did not score a single point in the 2nd and 3rd quarters of this ball game, and that's just something that we do not usually hear from a New Orleans Saints football team. Nonetheless, the Saints are now 1-2. The Vikings are 1-2 as well. We had the Cincinnati Bengals dominate once again at home 33-7, beating the Tennessee Titans. The Bengals raced out to a 26-0 lead. Their defense continues to be dominant, especially at home. This is the 2nd straight week where they've only allowed opponents 1 touchdown. Jake Locker really struggled with 185 passing yards and 2 interceptions. Meanwhile, for Cincinnati, they're continuing to do a good job running the football. 31 carries for 116 yards and 3 TDs, 2 of those by Giovanni Bernard. A.J. Green got back out on the football field after missing last week's action with a toe injury. He had 6 catches for 102 yards. The Titans are 1-2. The Cincinnati Bengals are now 3-0 and looking very impressive heading into a bye week before they come back and play the New England Patriots in Week 5. Let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll go ahead and finish wrapping up our Week 3 action from around the NFL. Once again, it's the NFL Exporter live on DerekShapiroShow.com. You are listening to The Final Wrap. Stay tuned. We'll be right back back after this quick break. Welcome back. I am the NFL Exporter, and you are listening to the final wrap on DerekShapiroShow.com. Jumping back into our NFL action from week 3, we had the Baltimore Ravens get a last-second field goal from kicker Justin Tucker to pull out a tough road win, 23-21 over the Cleveland Browns. This was another game that was pretty evenly matched, but when we look inside the numbers, there's going to be some things that we see that could have possibly led to this 2-point loss by the Cleveland Browns, who have played extremely well this season, losing the first game at Pittsburgh by 3 points, winning at home last week against New Orleans by 2 points, and then this week coming out and losing again by 2 points. And it's a lot of mistakes and costly things that are really costing Cleveland these wins. Now, when we look inside the numbers, Baltimore was able to run the ball more effectively, 33 carries for 160 yards, as opposed to Cleveland, 29 for 21. Brian Hoyer continues to play well, had 290 yards and a touchdown. Joe Flacco didn't do as well as Hoyer, actually had only 217 passing yards and 1 touchdown. But again, Baltimore did run the ball more effectively. It was a 32-yard reception by Steve Smith to get Baltimore within field goal range to close that game out. Smith finished with 5 catches for 101 yards to lead Baltimore in receiving yards for the 3rd straight game. The biggest 2 things that where Cleveland lost this one, 12 penalties for 94 yards. Cleveland's kicker also missed 2 field goals. And so a tough loss for the Browns at home. I'm quite sure they'll continue to play good football, though. They have a very solid team over there. Just got to cut down on these mistakes. When you're losing games by 2 and 3 points, you have to understand that penalties, turnovers, and especially missing field goals are things that can always come back to haunt you. The Ravens are now 2-1. Cleveland drops to 1-2. The Detroit Lions got a win at home in a game that was very, very sloppy. As I talked about on last week's show, when Green Bay and Detroit play each other, this game has a tendency to be very low scoring, and that's what we've seen, especially when these games are played in Detroit. It just seems like that defense has Aaron Rodgers and the Packers number. Now look, you would think with Detroit having 3 turnovers, they would have lost this football game, but their defense held Green Bay in check. Eddie Lacy fumbled, which Detroit returned for a touchdown to get out to an early 7-0 lead. And again, they just did a great job of making life very difficult for Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers only had 162 passing yards and 1 touchdown. Running back Eddie Lacy continues to struggle, only 8 carries for 36 yards. Meanwhile, Detroit had a balanced attack. Even though he had 2 interceptions, Matt Stafford was able to move the chains enough with 246 passing yards, and Detroit's team had 38 rushes for 115 yards, most notably a late 3rd quarter touchdown by Reggie Bush from 26 yards out sealed the deal on this one. Again, this was a very, very competitive game. The big news coming out of this one is linebacker Stephen Tulloch suffered a torn ACL. He is done for the year. A major part of that Detroit defense. He actually injured himself after he sacked Aaron Rodgers. He jumped in the air to celebrate and came down awkward on his knee. That's going to be a big loss for the Detroit defense. Nonetheless, the Lions are 2-1. The Packers now 1-2. Indianapolis pounded the Jacksonville Jaguars 44-17. Not much to talk about in this one. You had quarterback Andrew Luck simply go to work on this hapless Jaguars defense, passing for 370 yards and 4 touchdowns, both career highs for him. Meanwhile, the Jacksonville Jaguars were down 30-0. Continue to be the embarrassment of the NFL. I don't know how this team is going to find a way to win this season, besides maybe playing some of the weaker teams. At this point, point, Tampa Bay, maybe St. Louis, but it does not look good for the Jaguars, who are now 0-3. I think they're going to start going with their rookie quarterback, Blake Bortles, because it just doesn't look well. You might as well let him get on the football field and start getting some experience under his belt. That win for Indianapolis was their first of the season. They're 1-2. Jacksonville is now 0-3. New England was able to win at home over Oakland 16-9, but this was another elite team who does not look good right now. This was the game in past years where New England would have blew the Raiders out the stadium, only winning 16-9. There's certainly a lot of question marks going on out in New England. They were only able to run the ball for 76 yards on 32 carries, and Tom Brady still does not look comfortable. 234 yards passing, only one touchdown. This is not what we're accustomed to see. And then when you have a rookie quarterback for the Raiders playing against a Bill Belichick defense, you would think that they would really get this guy problems. They held him in check, but he only had one interception. Actually played pretty well with confidence, but it was New England's defense being able to hold the Raiders to just 3 field goals. The Patriots are now 2-1. The Raiders 0-3. Again, the Patriots are a team who are going to have to get their act together and play much better if they expect to win next week on the road at Kansas City. The Arizona Cardinals improved to 3-0. They sit atop the NFC West division early in the season, handing the San Francisco 49ers a loss for the second straight week. And the thing that I don't like about this, especially myself, being a 49ers fan, I'm very open with my opinions. I'm not biased at all. But Anquan Bolden, the wide receiver for the 49ers, was quoted after this loss saying that the referees are the ones who cost the 49ers their last 2 losses. Well, guess what, Mr. Bolden? I beg to differ. How about last week against the Chicago Bears? You turned the ball over 4 times after having a 17-0 lead. Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. And then this week, you got a second-string quarterback who the defense is allowing to throw for 244 yards, 2 TDs for a 98.5 passer rating. And the 49ers ran the ball only 9 times for 23 yards. And so I think those are the reasons that the 49ers are 1-2. The referees, sure, they made some bad calls, but guess what? When the 49ers defense can't get a single sack on a backup quarterback, when they can't force any interceptions, any forced fumbles, besides the one they had on Larry Fitzgerald, who was close to scoring on another touchdown. And these are areas we talked about with San Francisco in the preseason. How are they going to have a pass rush with their star pass rusher Aldon Smith suspended? And how were they going to do in coverage with basically an overhaul in the secondary? Arizona continues to be a stout on the defensive side of the football, and they're playing solid ball out there in Arizona. Even with a backup quarterback, as I mentioned, the Cardinals are now 3-0. The 49ers dropped to 1-2. They've got some serious issues that they're going to have to address if they plan on having a successful season. The Seattle Seahawks topped the Denver Broncos in overtime 26-20 in a rematch from last year's Super Bowl. Seattle got out to a 17-3 lead at halftime, in which the Broncos in the first half played extremely conservative. I don't understand that approach. I know you want to keep your team in ball games, but with Peyton Manning in that offense, these guys, you gotta open things up. Nonetheless, this was a very good game. The difference in this one was Seattle's ability to run the football. Russell Wilson and Peyton Manning basically both played to an even draw. But when you're looking at Denver only able to run the ball 20 times for 36 yards, meanwhile you see Seattle running the ball 37 times for 129 yards, makes a huge difference. You're also seeing Seattle's defense keep the Thomas brothers in check. Julius and Demaryius Thomas were held to 7 catches for 48 yards and 1 TD, which came on a shovel pass to tight end Julius Thomas right around the goal line area. This win for Seattle improves them to 2-1. Denver drops to 2-1. I think Denver came away from this one with some confidence, feeling like at least they know they can play with Seattle. But again, they're going to have to find a way to run the football if they think they're going to have a chance to beat the Seahawks. Kansas City got their first win of the season, beating Miami 34-15. That game was in Miami. Neither team had turnovers in this one, but it was Alex Smith outplaying Ryan Tannehill. Alex Smith, 186 yards, 3 touchdowns. You also seen Kansas City with a huge advantage running the football. 41 carries for 174 yards, 132 of those by backup Niles Davis, who added in the TD as well. And there's some dissension already starting in that Miami locker room. Guys are not happy with the play calling. The defense is starting to point fingers, and they've got to find a way to right the ship soon, or this thing could really start going south for the Miami Dolphins, who are now 1-2. After winning at home to start the season off against New England. Kansas City is looking to build off a great victory on the road. In Sunday Night Football, we had the Pittsburgh Steelers put up 37 points in Carolina, which was a huge surprise. We look inside the numbers again. Once again, you have Pittsburgh with no turnovers, Carolina with 2 turnovers, and Pittsburgh was able to run the football very effectively. They had 34 rushes for 264 yards, 147 of those by Le'Veon Bell, who continues to impress at running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Meanwhile, Carolina only had 10 rushes for 42 yards. The studs continue to be the same for Pittsburgh. Antonio Brown, 10 catches, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. This guy is just playing remarkable football to start off the season. Ben Roethlisberger was extremely efficient with the football, 22 out of 30, 196 yards, 2 touchdowns, and they had a 9-3 lead at halftime. Did Pittsburgh really opened it up in the third quarter with those couple touchdown passes from Roethlisberger to Brown. They outscored Carolina 14-3. At that point, Pittsburgh entered the fourth quarter being up in this ball game 23-6, and from there it became one-dimensional for the Carolina Panthers. As we mentioned, this is a very tough defense in Carolina, but that offense has to find ways to put up points, which has proved to be a huge problem for Carolina over the last couple years. Nonetheless, both of those teams are now 2-1. And rounding out our action for week 3 in the NFL on Monday Night Football, it was the Chicago Bears beating the New York Giants 27-19. Here is another game, and I know that the theme has been common recapping these games, but hey, that's the reality of the situation. Now, the Bears only won this game by 8 points, and once again it was turnovers. You have the Jets committing 3 turnovers, Chicago only having 1. And when you lose by 8 points, those turnovers certainly are points that could be scored, or punting the ball and pinning the other team with some pretty bad field position and making them work their way down the field. There weren't a whole lot of big stats in this game. You had Alshon Jeffrey have 8 catches for 105 yards. Happy to see him back healthy. He was trying to get past a hamstring injury. We had Martellus Bennett. He was the top tight end for the week. He had 2 TD receptions. We talked about Jay Cutler in the preseason. Played clean football tonight. Threw for 225 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Meanwhile, second-year quarterback Geno Smith continues to struggle. Had 316 passing yards, 1 touchdown, but 2 interceptions. This was a game where you seen the trend continue. The Jets are tough against the run. Held Chicago to a total of 21 carries for 60 yards, but their secondary is very weak. And I will tell you from this game, I really don't understand why Rex Ryan continued to blitz. I would think if you have a weak secondary, you from time to time you want to drop some more guys back in coverage, or at least mix up, what defenses you're coming with. He pretty much just blitzed and left his defenders in man-to-man coverage every down. And that is not a recipe for success, especially playing against top-tier wide receivers like Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall. You got Matt Forte coming out the backfield, a good tight end like Martellus Bennett. I just don't understand that strategy. You got to mix it up. It became predictable. Chicago figured it out. Jay Cutler was getting the ball out of his hands quickly. They were identifying matchups, and it just doesn't seem like a recipe for success. I know that that's Rex Ryan's thing, but you got to think this thing through, Rex. I don't think blitzing every single down with a weak secondary is not going to win you a lot of football games. The Jets didn't do much better running themselves. They run enough, but it's not consistent. And again, Geno Smith, he continues to struggle. But I will say to Smith's defense, look at his wide receivers he's got. Eric Decker was unable to play in this one with the hamstring injury. The next best wide receiver you have on your roster is Jeremy Curley. No disrespect to him. He's a very good slot receiver, but I mean, that's about it. So they're going to certainly have to get some more weapons to help him out. Nonetheless, Chicago improves to 2-1. The Jets dropped to 1-2. And that's how things go in the NFL. Again, it was a very wacky week. We've seen a lot of teams who we thought would dominate barely win. We've seen some teams who were accustomed to seeing playing well not do that good. The teams I'm speaking of who should have been blowouts in past years, certainly. The Saints at home against Minnesota, New England at home against Oakland, and the San Francisco 49ers and Green Bay Packers just don't look good right now. And so that's the way it works out. We'll see how things go after week 4, which is going to complete 1 quarter of the season. Once again, before we get out of here, I am the NFL Exporter. Make sure to check me out on Twitter at NFL Exporter, on Facebook at NFL Exporter. That is spelled NFLExporter. Also go to youtube.com, click on channels. In the search engine, put NFL Exporter, or go to youtube.com. In the search engine, put NFL Exporter on the final wrap for Derek Shapiro Show, and you'll be able to find the shows on there as well. For Derek Shapiro, once again, connect with him on Facebook at Derek Shapiro. That's DEREK SHAPIRO, just like the website you're on right now. To find him on Twitter, it's Derek Shapiro Show, and show is spelled SHO. There's no W on the end. Once again, you want to make sure to join us each and every Tuesday, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to call in and be on the show. That number is 716-249-0552. If you would prefer to hit us up using email, that email address is NFLExporter@yahoo.com. That's NFLExporter@yahoo.com. Everybody, thanks for joining the show weekly. I certainly expect to see you here again, same time next week. Until then, have a safe week. Enjoy another week of NFL football. And I am the NFL Exporter, signing out for the Final Wrap Sports Talk Show on DerekShapiroShow.com. 1100.